Welcome back to the Hill of Roses, where we come once again to celebrate the best contributors to our independent policy movement for progress to bring power to the people like you. With us on the program today, we got to talk to Christine O'Connor. She is the press director of David Kim's campaign for Congress in California's 34th district. It was a great conversation getting to talk with her about how she got involved in the campaign, some of the lessons she took away from how the campaign has played out in terms of media strategies, as well as, how they've been trying to interact with some recent current events, regarding their opponent, Jimmy Gomez, in terms of conflicting endorsements from our revolution, their unwillingness to, want to participate in any debates, and, some of the big money interests that they have going on. It was great being able to get into the nitty gritty with Christine. We love talking with the people who are the true backbones of these political grassroots movements, the volunteers in these campaigns. She had a great message for us all today that each and every one of us can contribute to these campaigns, and not just with our donations, although those will be certainly appreciated for David Kim. So it was great being able to hear from her and get her insight on what these campaigns really need to support, not just for the 2020 cycle and David Kim, but all of these grassroots progressive candidates going forward. So I learned a lot. You're going to learn a lot. It was a great conversation. So with that being said, let's not delay anymore. Let's get into it. Okay, we're here with Christine O'Connor, the press director of David Kim. We've gotten to talk to David on several occasions, but as we're gearing towards the, conclusion of this election cycle, we really want to make sure that we're in touch with the teams and get to know a lot of the lessons from the internal teams of, getting into the field and communicating with the people. So we're so glad to be able to have you on, Christine, to be able to talk about the campaign and some of the lessons of getting involved in it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
You're very welcome. So, I think the first question that I want to talk to you about is, there's a lot of great candidates this cycle, but, David's one of our favorites here. He's one of the candidates that we're trying to help out. What got you involved in David's campaign in the first place? How'd you find out about him, and what really drew you in?
Yeah, so I owe all of this to a friend of mine who follows progressive politics very closely. She knew that I was interested and sent me David's website and said, hey, there's a progressive candidate running in your district. You should definitely vote for this guy. And so I sat down and I read his entire website, and I was just overcome with this feeling like I need to help this man make it to Congress. So I volunteered to help do some press activity. That's what I do for my job. And I was kind of expecting them to send me a press release once a week and say, hey, can you send this out? Hey, can you send this out? And then it ended up being the case that they didn't have anybody functioning in that role. So I was just kind of able to come in and hit the ground running and get some press efforts out.
So I'd love to ask you, obviously you do this as a professional activity, but has the experience of getting involved in the campaign, has that been a fulfilling experience? I think, press specifically has had an increased role in this election cycle, given that, so much of the campaigning now has to be done digitally. What's the experience been like getting involved in the team? Has there been any lessons you've learned from getting involved in doing, political press, management?
Yeah. Oh man, that's a lot of questions. So yes, it has been immensely empowering to be able to roll up my sleeves and do this work, especially because, when you're working with someone like David, he really surrounds himself with such great people. And I have learned so much from we have a fellowship program, even from these people who are students, young people, all the way up to our most senior team leads. Everybody's been really inspiring and encouraging and so knowledgeable about their kind of niche position on the team. And yeah, I've learned a lot about what it means to work for a political candidate as opposed to working for a company. I did a lot of consumer product PR in my previous job. I did a lot of healthcare, but this is just a completely different animal. And there's so much enthusiasm surrounding this movement right now, the progressive movement, that it's fun. It's really fun in a way that other PR is not. So I think that's been my biggest takeaway, just that this work can be inspiring and enjoyable, and it's hard. It's hard, especially when you're working for a candidate who is relatively unknown, especially as David was a few months ago. Obviously, our movement has grown so much since then. It's like I have whiplash from it. It's been wild, but yeah.
So, I'd love to pry a little bit more because I think there's a lot of things that you learn from getting involved in a campaign. I really truly believe that most politics is local. Can you tell us a little bit about what you learned about, California's 34th district? Because, you are a resident of the area, but you must have learned a lot more trying to do outreach into that area. What'd you learn about the area that you didn't understand before getting involved in politics?
Yeah, so one thing that I learned about our district in particular is how progressive it is. I didn't necessarily understand that before. I knew that California is a blue state and that LA County is typically more blue than places like, I don't know, Riverside or Orange County. But our district voted for Bernie Sanders in the primaries over Joe Biden, and learning that and kind of using that to grow a greater understanding of the individual issues that are important here. I mean, obviously, our district is home to Skid Row. So homelessness is a daily reality for everyone here. I mean, if you're housed or if you're experiencing homelessness right now, you cannot escape the reality of what this district is facing. And, it was bad before the pandemic, and then COVID-19 hit. And I mean, the problem has continued to grow. So I think that's the number one thing that I was really, my eyes were opened to. Um, and then in addition to that, there's also, I was never involved in Yang Gang actually before I joined David's campaign.
Sure.
So in addition to kind of the Bernie Sanders side of it, I also became much more aware of what's the word I'm looking for? The math aspect and how
Sure.
like legislating based on facts is just so needed. I also wasn't aware of how much money local politicians even take from corporate sponsors. Corporate donors. I knew it happened. But once you start working on a campaign, you kind of get in the weeds of it a little bit more, and you start to realize where the money comes from and what it buys. So, money that comes from pharmaceutical companies, for example, or from law enforcement, those make a huge difference. And to be supporting a candidate who rejects all of that has been amazing, because once you decide to say no to that money, you're really saying yes to the people. And that's what this district really needs right now. We need a leader who's going to come in and say, hey, how can I help? What can I do to help you? Not what can I do to help my political aspirations. And I think the district is used to the latter. So very excited to be working on a movement that's a little more people-centric.
Yeah, one thing I'd love to ask you, I think this is the final question for the first part of our conversation. You mentioned how you discovered how progressive your district really is, and how there's all this influence of these big money groups. There's been this recent kind of controversy surrounding the endorsements of Our Revolution, having the local chapters endorsing David versus what seems like the national chapters endorsing Jimmy Gomez. Could you talk through with our audience a little bit more about what that situation is? Because, I think it certainly has confused some of us who have been really deeply involved. Could you explain it for the folks out there?
Yeah, of course. So Our Revolution LA endorsed David back in several months ago. I believe it was June. And they've been extremely supportive throughout this whole time. They actually reaffirmed their support for us a couple of times on Twitter, especially. They put out a press release. The national branch ended up supporting Jimmy Gomez. And I think that it's just one indication of a larger disconnect. That just it happens when you have a really large organization that's national that maybe has local chapters or maybe it doesn't. But as soon as you step outside of the community, you tend to lose touch with it. And I think that that's also a big problem for people who get into politics for the right reasons. And then, they get to Washington and they get bogged down in everything that's going on there on the Hill. And they maybe forget about what got them started in the first place. And I think that that is maybe what's happened here. Our Revolution LA has come out once again in support of David and said that they will continue to support him and would like to know why Our Revolution National thought that their endorsement would be best given to Jimmy. I know that on Our Revolution on their website, they say that one of their biggest goals is getting corporate money out of politics. And if that is true, then the best people to endorse are the people who reject corporate money.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a ton of sense to me. So, when we come back, I think the conversation that I want to have with you is, how do we start, building up this movement for taking the lessons from this cycle and helping those that are probably going to be planning out campaigns in the future and also the opportunities to get involved. When this comes out, we're still going to have roughly a week to go before the election. So there's a lot more we got to do, but we'll take a quick break and then we'll be right back with Christine for more on this, building up our Yang Gang movement, our revolution movement. Okay, we're back. We're here with Christine O'Connor. We've been talking to her. She is the press director of David Kim's campaign for Congress in California's 34th District. And we've getting to hear the lessons of how she got involved and why David's campaign is so important and clearing the air on this Our Revolution recent piece of news of endorsements compared to the national chapter and the local chapter. Christine, I want to continue that conversation of really exploring the difference between local politics and really understanding your district compared to these national organizations. I think a lot of politics is local. This is a famous quote from Tip O'Neill. What was some of the, media that you tried to do that was focused for the district? Like, what have you found in your experience now, serving this campaign as the press director is, that media that's mainly just targeted for your area compared to, the press you would have to manage for, national social media outreach?
Yeah, for in-district media, it's we did get a brief mention in the LA Times, but really, I think the most important outlets are, like you said, at the community level. But I think that the internet has allowed community to be defined very differently. So I would consider Hill of Roses to be a community outlet because this is something that is unique to a small population. But if you're talking about outlets that are specifically located in CA 34, we're really looking at places like the LA Downtown News, which did a full page story on David. And we're so excited about that. We also had a piece come out recently in The Land magazine. But for the organizing and the pitching, when you are talking to local media, you want to make sure that you're hitting on the issues that are important where you're at. So for LA media, it's law enforcement, it's homelessness. It's really about the issues that you're pitching and who you're reaching out to, as opposed to maybe something a little more national. You can still get down to the granular issues, but you just have to have a wider scope in mind. If you're talking about UBI, for example, it's here are all of the different countries that have participated in UBI trials, and here's what happened there, and how can we replicate this in the United States? Whereas in the district, it's what will UBI do for you? What will it help you put food on the table? Will it help your neighbors stay in their apartment? Will it, I think the scope is just different.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. One thing I'd love to ask, because, I had this experience while I was trying to run my own campaign. There are some barriers to, trying to get access to local media groups. What has your experience been like in trying to work with some of these like local outlets? Have you been having pushback? Like, have they been more receptive lately to try and cover your campaign? What's that relationship been like with the local media?
Yeah, so we have definitely had more success lately. I think as David's name becomes a bigger name and as this movement grows, definitely we benefit from that recognition. But that's that's to be expected. I think that Jimmy Gomez is such a name in CA 34 that it may have given some folks pause to think like, hey, this challenger is kind of coming out of nowhere. Are they the real deal? But now that they see that we are, and we have all this wonderful momentum, not just on social media, but in the district on the ground, there's a lot of energy here. And I think that has helped us immensely.
Now, has it been a relationship where you've actually had to interact with them, or has it been just, trying to get involved in the district and making enough noise where they have to cover you? Has it been basically like a resistant relationship, where you have to just do enough to make sure that they can't ignore you? Or has it been something where they've been like saying, okay, we can write something on this. You have a press release of an upcoming event. We'd love to give you some air on this. What's that relationship been like? Because I know in our area, when I was running in New Jersey, it was basically a stranglehold from the media. They don't want to give any details out there because they do have this thumb from the political machine. Did you feel any of that pressure at all?
I think it's been a little bit of both. I would love to see David do some more broadcast interviews, but that's just been a tough nut to crack. And I don't know if we will crack it before the election. We'll see. But we've been trying. But in terms of things like, we've had a lot of attention from people who have fairly big followings online, and that's been one of our real strengths. But I think that there's online outlets are more likely to take a risk, and they're more willing to kind of jump in and see what's going on while it's still building, as opposed to once it's already kind of reached its peak. So a little bit of both.
Yeah, no, that certainly makes a lot of sense to me. And I think one of the things I'm curious about too is there are some of these other things that are kind of largely media controlled as well. That I'm curious if there has been any development and potential barriers. Like for instance, polling is something that's very traditionally done for Senate races as well as for presidential races. But I have not seen much in the way of polling for the individual congressional races. I recently saw David Kim share something from I Side With, but a lot of these polls are required from media sponsors. Has there been any outreach to media groups to try and poll the district? Likewise, same thing goes for debates. They are usually the ones who have to sponsor the event and run it and administer it as a moderator. Have they had any discussions on that, or have they said no on that? Has that been an effort you guys have been trying to do?
Yeah, well, we've been challenging Jimmy to debate us for quite some time. Actually, Occidental College wanted to have a kind of debate set up where they ask Jimmy and David each the same set of questions and put their interviews side by side. We said yes right away, but they said that they wouldn't do it unless Jimmy also did. So unfortunately, that did not happen. It still might happen. There's a little bit of time left, but I'm not holding out hope for that. And then actually, I'm so sorry, I've forgotten the first
The other
part.
part was polling. Have
Polling,
you
yeah.
had any news on polling of the race?
No, so unfortunately, there isn't really much polling that's done for congressional races unless somebody has the money to pay for it. And because we are very people powered, we're doing well, but we don't have the money to pay for an expensive poll. But where we can find indicators, we do, and but no official by the books polling.
Yeah, no, I do think it's super important that we can try and get these things out there. That's something that we're actually trying to develop here at the Hill of Roses ourselves for not, unfortunately, not soon enough for this cycle, but
Sure.
for future cycles. Because I do think that really helps people know, there is an important race that people should be aware of, and you can really tease out some of the issues and build up the, name recognition of that as well. I'd love to ask you, from your experience in this, campaign, What do you think are some of the things, obviously if David wins, he's still going to probably want to run for reelection. What are some of those lessons of, longer term infrastructure stuff we should be starting to build up for future cycles as well from your experience running this campaign? Or not running the campaign, but running the press aspect of this campaign.
Yeah. Are you asking in terms of like what the candidate teams can do, or what
Yeah, like
external works can do?
what would have helped, David's campaign have even more traction? Like obviously one thing I mentioned that we're trying to develop is like polling. What other aspects do you think that we could be, developing outside of just one candidate's campaign to, support these candidates in the future so that grassroots candidates have a better chance of succeeding?
Yeah. So actually, one of the things that we did on David's campaign is organize a lot of fellows who have been just unbelievable. Their energy and enthusiasm is amazing, and their skills. If there was some kind of way to get that attention from students, from young people, and kind of organize for the campaigns so that the campaigns don't have to do it, that would be amazing. Because while everybody does make their best effort to get ground game support and get phone bankers, I think having a centralized place to kind of uh, intake applications for these, maybe like a little bit more, um, I guess, positions that are a little bit more involved than just doing a few phone banking sessions, that would be helpful. It would be
Like
very helpful.
like an operational admin, like almost like an HR department for multiple campaigns. Is that
Yeah, I mean, maybe, yeah. I'm just thinking about this because, every time our core team is stuck on an issue, we're able to draw on the support of these really fantastic individuals. And I don't know if every campaign has that opportunity. Um, but if there is a way to build that support and build that network, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah. So, I think one thing that I would like to close on is, I think you had mentioned at the beginning that this is one of the first time you really got involved in a political campaign. Like, has your experience been that you have felt comfortable during this process? Like, I think some people feel like they don't have the skill set to get involved, or they don't want to or they don't feel like they can be useful beyond phone banking, which they might not love. What are some of those things that, are available opportunities for people to get involved so that like anyone, regardless of what their skill set, feels like they can contribute in some way?
Yeah. So imposter syndrome is a very, very real thing, and it's something that I have suffered from. A lot of my friends have suffered from, and it's this notion that no matter what it is that you have to offer, it's not enough. And I want to tell you that that is not the case. Um, Getting involved with this campaign has been so enormously empowering for me, and I know that a similar experience could do the same thing for a lot of people. If you are someone who is energetic, if you are someone who's good at social media, like there are all these individual skills. It's not just speech writing and research and policy making. There are a lot of things that we as a campaign team need. Um, and there are a lot of people who have those skills to offer who don't think that they do. So if you, I mean, I got involved because I filled out a volunteer form saying I have some press experience, and you know look what I'm doing. And I don't know if I knew that I could do this job, but I am here and I am doing my best, and you can too.
Wow.
There's also just an element of identity too. If you are Black, if you have a disability, if you are or have been homeless, we need to hear from you. And it is so important that you share your experiences with campaigns, because that's how candidates can really make a difference, is by hearing directly from the people who are closest to them, what the issues are and what can be done to solve them. So no matter what it is that, no matter what your identity, there is likely a place for you.
Yeah, no, I think That's such a valuable point to kind of close on. There's so much impact that we can just be able to do. And if you really don't even feel like you have like a necessary skill that you can bring to the table, many hands make light work. So if you can bring more friends along as volunteers with you, boy, you've done a lot and you are now going to have to not do as much yourself. So, Christine, I just want to end right now and, give you the floor. Do you have any final words for the audience out there? Obviously, you're going to want to plug David Kim. So we got that scrolling across the bottom of the page, but the floor is yours. You got the final word with the Rosebuds now.
All right. Awesome. Stay inspired, stay active, keep learning, surround yourself with smart people, read every day, read the news, read fiction, and, vote. Thank you for voting. Thank you for all of your hard work and attention and enthusiasm. Follow David Kim, davidkim2020.com. You can follow him on Twitter at davidkim2020. You can follow me on Twitter at DKPressDirector. And tell your friends to vote, tell your friends to volunteer. And thank you so much.
You're very welcome. So, Christine, before we go, though, you said we should all be readers. So I have to ask, do you have any recommendations for the folks out there? What should we be reading?
Oh boy. If you need a good laugh, I highly recommend anything that Alexandra Petrie has ever done.
Okay.
But in terms of novelists, let's see. Zadie Smith is wonderful. I'm a big fan of Roxane Gay as a writer. I think those are my top recommendations for the day.
Okay, wonderful. So yes, we'll have to check those out. I haven't had the opportunity to read either of those, so I'll have to check them out as well. Christine, thank you so much for coming on to the Hill of Roses today. It was a pleasure being able to chat with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for watching today's episode of the Hill of Roses. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you did, please let us know by subscribing to our channel, liking today's video, and sharing the video with your friends. Also, if you want to be notified, please make sure you hit the bell when you subscribe. Finally, if you want to find more of our network's content, please go to thehillofroses.com. With that being said, we love y'all for helping the movement grow, and we hope you're staying rosy out there.